Hello and welcome to this IELTS general writing preparation video. Today I am going to take you through task 1 of the general writing, and we're going to look specifically at how to write a formal letter. So I'm going to explain the ins and outs of writing formal letters when it comes to scoring, your outline, strategy, tips and tricks, all of that. We're going to look at a step-by-step example together, and I will show you what to do and what not to do when approaching this task in your IELTS general writing exam. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I'm just going to explain a little bit about writing task 1 in general. These are things that you can expect. First off, for writing task 1, no matter what type of letter you are required to write, you should aim to spend about 20 minutes on this, no more and no less. This is because the whole writing task 1 is about 60 minutes, and so if you dedicate 20 minutes to writing task 1, you have 40 minutes to writing task 2, and that is generally considered to be a bit more complex than writing a letter in writing task 1. You should aim to write at least 150 words. This is your minimum, although you should not write more than 200 words, so aim to stay within the 150 and 200 word mark. And like I mentioned earlier, for this writing task, you're going to have to write a letter. Your 3 options will be a personal letter, a semi-formal letter, or a formal style letter. So these are 3 different tones, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But today we are going to focus on formal style. And this is something that students tend to not like because they have to be very formal and professional. And so obviously the language changes here. Now these are some things you can expect to write about when writing these 3 types of letters. On a very general front, you're going to have to either give or ask for information. This is very general. It could be information like a ticket to a show, or it could be writing to an airline company because you lost your luggage, for example. These are very general requirements. You might also be asked to write about your opinion, or perhaps writing about a complaint for a company, or expressing something you like, something you dislike. Really anything that has to do with giving or asking for information is fair game in this writing task. So you really have to pay attention to your question prompt and understand what you have to write about. And of course, you have to practice. When it comes to scoring, these are the 4 areas that we'll have to look at. First is task achievement. So what we look at here involves, first off, the word count, and you have to make sure that you're using the appropriate tone, and also have you fulfilled the purpose of your letter. So if your letter is supposed to be written to the director of an airline company, have you done that with the appropriate tone? Have you fulfilled the purpose? Have you included the necessary information? Basically, have you achieved, have you met your objective of this task? This is why understanding the question prompt is so important, because this will allow us to understand what exactly it is that we have to write. Then we have coherence and cohesion. Now, this is the same for both the general training and the academic training. So if you're familiar with the academic coherence and cohesion, this is pretty much the same. Basically, it involves your organization of the information, how you have your paragraphs, how you're able to link your ideas. This is why an outline is so important, and obviously we're going to prepare an outline for our letter. So this is just making sure that everything is organized. Next, we have our lexical resource, and in short, this is all about your vocabulary. This is also the same for the general training and the academic test. Here, you want to make sure you're using appropriate language, so you want to minimize your errors of spelling. You don't want to use slang for a formal letter. You want to make sure that your collocations are clear, that you're using very natural language as well. So here we just want to minimize our errors, and I would advise to just spend some time checking your letter once you've written it for your lexical resource. If you've made a mistake, for example, and you are writing with paper and a writing utensil, just be sure to make one line straight like this you want to do this and then write the correct spelling afterwards. So don't worry if you've made a mistake. It's best if you catch it in the beginning before it gets any worse, but just write a straight line. You don't want to do something like this and completely scribble over the word. Make sure that everything is neat and clean and legible for the examiner. And then lastly, you have your grammatical range and your accuracy. Grammar is very important. So this is also the same for the general test and the academic test. You want to make sure that you're using a nice range of grammar and tenses, punctuation, and you want to make sure that you're accurate when using your grammar. So for example, don't use the past tense if the present perfect tense is what you need to use. Even though it might make sense and the examiner might be able to understand what you're saying, if you make mistakes on grammar, it will hurt you in the long run with your scoring. Now, these are all weighted equally, so it isn't like one is the most important over the other, but just rest assured that we are going to look at outlining, we're going to look at tone, and we're going to look at how we should write our essay. So this will approach all of these different scoring components. All right, so here is our guide for today for our formal letter. I'm going to take you through a step-by-step example, but before we do that, I just want you to be aware of how we are going to approach this guide. So first off, you'll need to obviously read and understand your question. Now on test day, you are going to have 3 options for your general writing task 1. It's going to be a formal letter, semi-formal, or personal. You won't know beforehand, so you have to make sure that you understand what is written, so you're making the correct choices for your language and your words. So with step 1 comes a couple of sub-steps. First off, you want to understand the background information that you see in your prompt. You want to understand your instruction words, and you want to understand any accompanying detail. We're going to look at these 3 steps together when we read our prompt, and this will make a world of difference for our step 2, which is planning our outline. So once we know all of this information, we're going to plan our outline based on the specific type of letter. And of course, we're going to set our tone. So you'll have to set your tone, and this will make a difference in the words you choose to write, the language, any phrases that you have. We'll get to this in just a minute, but it's very important to set your tone before you put your writing utensil to the paper or before you put your fingers on your keyboard. You really have to make sure you know the tone, because this will help you choose the words. If you haven't set your tone before you start writing, you're going to write blindly. You're not going to have a confident stance on what you need to write, and this usually leads to writing more than is required, much more, and then, of course, taking up more time and taking away time from writing task 2. So we have 20 minutes. We have to be really succinct. We have to be clear on our objective. So these 3 steps will help you do that. So that 4th, you can go ahead and start writing and get this task done with. All right, so now let's take a look at our example question that we are going to use today for our step-by-step example. So we're going to start with step 1. We're going to read and understand our question. After that, I will show you how to plan your outline. Okay, here we have our question and our prompt that we're going to use today in our step-by-step example. So let's read it once, and then I'm going to show you how you can pull apart these 3 areas: the background information, the instruction words, and the accompanying details. So we see, last week you lost your luggage while traveling on holiday. Luckily, you have travel insurance. Write a letter to the manager of your insurance company. In your letter, describe the characteristics of what you lost, explain how you lost it, tell the insurance company what you need from them. Write at least 150 words. You do not need to write any addresses. Begin your letter as follows: Dear Sir or Madam. All right, so this is our prompt, and this tells you everything you need to know, including what type of letter you need to write. I'll show you how you can use this to your advantage. Now, this first sentence is going to be your background information. The first sentence will tell you what you need to know in terms of the background. So last week, you were traveling, you lost your luggage, and you were on holiday. Luckily, you have travel insurance. So this already gives you this idea that you will be writing about your travel insurance. Next, you'll have your instruction words. The instruction words are right here in this sentence. Write a letter to the manager of your insurance company. This tells you exactly which type of letter you need to write. Think of it this way. Do you know the manager of the insurance company? Probably not. So this is why it's going to be a formal letter, okay? This is the main sentence that will tell you your instructions, so make sure you understand that. And then the accompanying details are these 3 points here. You're going to see 2 or 3 points usually, and these will tell you exactly what you need to write. And these, luckily, go along with our 3 paragraphs that we're going to look at our outline in just a minute. And these 3 points go along with the 3 paragraphs we're going to use in our outline, which I'll show you in just a minute. But basically, you're going to have to describe the characteristics of what you lost in your luggage. You'll have to explain how you lost it, and you need to tell the insurance company what you need. And remember, we looked at this word need before in our explanation of what you usually have to write. So you're going to write about your needs. And remember, you'll have to do this in a formal tone. Very important. So this is your background information, your instructions, and of course, the accompanying details. Use this for all of your prompts, and this will allow you to understand the tone and which type of essay you need to write. Also, it tells you exactly how you have to start your letter, dear sir or madam. And of course, this is already the first point of our outline, which I'll show you. So this we already know. This is why taking at least 1 minute to understand and think about your prompt is very important. Of course, I've slowed it down for you today just to show you the unique structures of the prompt. The more you understand the prompt, the better you'll be to tackle this letter. Okay, now let's just shift away from this page for one moment and we'll look at how we are going to form our outline. Okay, so now looking at our outline, this is how we will approach it. We have a couple of steps here, but they are pretty clear. First off is a greeting. So this is just a few words. Don't be scared at the length of this outline. The things are really succinct. So first off, obviously, you're going to have your greeting. Secondly, you're going to state your reason for writing, which we saw in our prompt. Then you have 3 paragraphs. This is pretty much the body. This is the main content of your letter. And then you're going to have 1 closing sentence. And of course, just like your greeting, you're going to have a farewell and your name. You're going to sign off. So see that the most important part here is really your 3 paragraphs, making sure that all of your content is in your 3 paragraphs. However, you have to make sure that you are writing in a formal tone right from the greeting and up until the farewell. So I'm going to show you some examples of how you can set your tone to make sure that you're getting all of the points for this task. All right, so this is a great table that we can use for formal tone, and we have our lexical points, our voice, example phrases, common greetings, and common farewells. I, of course, would suggest that you study this beforehand, that you practice it and memorize it, because you will not have this on the exam. So obviously today I'm taking things really slowly. I'm making sure that you're understanding all of this, but definitely prepare this as much as you can before the exam. So first off, some things to keep in mind for our letter today. In terms of the lexical points, we are never going to use contractions. In fact, I would never use contractions in any area of the exam, because remember, you're not going to be tested on contractions. So in the reading examples, you are never going to see contractions. I would just omit them from test day. Instead, you want to spell out the 2 words. So you want to spell out cannot instead of writing can't. Definitely don't do that. For the formal tone, for the formal letter, you want to avoid colloquialisms, idioms, and slang. Now, this could be okay in other letters, and we'll look at that in other videos. But for the formal tone, definitely do not use things like, hey, or what's up, what's going on. Definitely nothing like this. You want to be formal, you want to be professional because you are writing in a formal tone. So for that, for your voice, you want to use passive voice if you can. It's an excellent option. It appears more professional and it's very polished. So you would say something like, the project will be finished by tomorrow, rather than I will finish the project by tomorrow. Now, this is just an example of a project. You want to adapt this to the topic that you have in your letter. In general, practice your passive voice. It is great for letters. You're more than likely to see it in the reading as well, especially in the general reading section 3. So just be familiar with it. Same thing with conditional. You definitely want to use the conditional grammatical form. So something like I would like, I would prefer, instead of things that are very direct, like I want, I need, okay? Remember, if you have to talk about likes or dislikes or needs, stick to this conditional grammatical form. A nice example that you could use in a formal tone is, I would like to request your presence at our annual fundraiser, or something like, I sincerely hope that you will be able to join us. See how this is very professional? It's not something that you would say to your friend or to someone in your family. This is something very formal. And so for the greetings, you want to stick mainly with these two, to whom it may concern, or dear sir or madam. This is if you do not know who you are writing to in terms of their gender. If you do know, if it tells you in your prompt, you may have to change this. And if your prompt tells you exactly who you're writing to, so for example, a congresswoman, you obviously want to use that title. These are just general formal titles. And then for your farewell, you have a couple more options here. Of course, it depends on the context and your prompt, but you could say things like yours faithfully, gratefully yours, thanking you kindly, your loyal customer, if it's something that you have bought, or if you're making a complaint, it depends. You could also use this. So just keep this in mind. Of course, practice makes perfect. So make sure you are bringing all of your English language knowledge to the table when you are writing this letter. Okay, so we've looked at our outline and we've also looked at the tone, so some vocabulary that we should be using in this writing. So what I have here is our lovely outline. I have the greeting and exactly what we saw on the slide pertaining to the outline. So this is what I've written. When you are practicing or taking the exam, you don't have to write all of this information. You could write something like P1 instead of paragraph 1, or the more you practice, if you get the hang of it, you could even just eliminate writing P1 if you know that, and you could write your notes. So right now what we're going to do together is embellish this outline and get ready to write our letter. Now, just before we go any further, I want to let you know that you do not need to write full sentences. You do not have to have perfect grammar when it comes to your outline. This needs to be understood by you and you only, because only you will be looking at this outline and you'll be referencing it for your letter. So don't be surprised if I am writing here without using whole sentences or whole words. This is really just for you. Obviously, I'm going to take this slowly today, but you should be able to go through this in just a minute. It's just to organize your thoughts and make sure you have everything outlined for what you want to say. So for number 1, we already have it out here because we are told to use dear sir or madam. So that means we must use it. I've just written it here to make it clear for you, but you do not have to write this in your outline necessarily. Now you want to understand your reason for writing. So again, this is going to be in your background information and your additional details. And as we know from doing that in step 1, we are writing about a lost luggage. So just for me, I'm going to write the reason, and I'm going to say I am writing, and I'll put 3 dots here, and I'm talking about a lost luggage. So just so I know, I'm going to introduce my reason in that area. Now for my first paragraph, I'm basically going to use these 3 points here to my advantage and use them as the first, second, and third paragraphs. It cannot get easier than this. So don't try to make it any more complicated by combining them in your paragraphs or switching up the order. Definitely not. You do not get scored for your creativity. So make sure you are following the prompt. So obviously in my first paragraph, I'm going to describe the luggage. And so I'm going to say something like, the luggage is, and I don't have to think about that now. I'm just going to write it in and know that I have to use my description points in the first paragraph. And so going off of that, the second paragraph is going to be an explanation on how I lost it. And I'm just going to say that perhaps the airline must have lost the luggage. And I'll say something like, perhaps it was put on a different flight. So I'm giving the reason for how I lost my luggage. I'm putting it into the airline's hands. So that is my explanation. And for my last point, I'm going to tell the insurance company what I need from them. So I'm going to say something like, I took out insurance, okay, and I would appreciate it if. This is a great phrase for formal tones. Again, I'm using the conditional. I'm using I would appreciate. I'm not saying I need. I'm being polite. I'm being formal. And that's why that table that we looked at before with tone is so important, because I'm already thinking about potential phrases and great things that I can add to make sure that I'm getting my point across in a professional and formal way. Now for a closing sentence, I am going to let them know that they can contact me. So I'll say, please let me know, perhaps if they need more information or if I can do anything else. And again, I'm going to pull from my list of formal closings, and I'll say something like, yours faithfully. I could technically also say faithful customer, loyal customer, but I'm just going to stick with yours faithfully. All right, so this is my outline, and you see that it's quite short. It just has the bare minimum of what I need, but already just looking at this, I sort of feel relief because I know the path that I'm going to take in my letter. And now if you're doing this with practice and you're doing this on your own time, you have about 18 minutes, okay, 17, 18 minutes to write the whole thing. And 17, 18 minutes is a lot better than full 20 minutes with no idea, no path, and a lot of mistakes. Okay, so that's why this step is so important. Also keep in mind here just that your paragraphs, so your 3 paragraphs here, are going to be the paragraphs with the most writing. Now remember, we have 150 words, so it's really impossible for all of your paragraphs to be 3 to 5 sentences. That's a lot. I would aim for 2 to 3 really good sentences from all of these paragraphs, okay? You don't want to write too much, and you want to make sure you're also giving appropriate time and words for your reason and for your closing sentence. So I would aim for 2 to 3 good full sentences. I'll show you what that looks like on this page here. But again, just remember 150 words is your minimum. You don't want to go so much over 200 because that means you're really just taking too much time to write this simple formal letter. Okay, now I'm going to get started. I'm going to write it obviously in a slower way just so that you can understand what I'm saying, and I'm going to take it step by step as I would the outline. The thing that I would do in the exam is use the outline to my advantage and reference it, so I'm going to do that for you now. Obviously, the first line is going to be, Dear Sir or Madam. It's exactly what you see in the prompt. I'm going to space, and then I am going to start with my reason for writing. So I said I am writing. Now, I want to file a claim. And this is what I know from my background experience in writing about insurance, knowing about travel. I'll talk a little bit about this at the end, but obviously in your practice, in your preparation, you should have a list of words that you need to include for certain things. Travel is definitely a topic that comes up in writing and also in speaking. So make sure you've got some nice vocabulary phrases, some great ideas to input into your essay. So I know that filing a claim is something that you would do with insurance. So I'm going to say, I am writing to file an insurance claim for luggage that was lost during my holiday last week. I'm using the information to my advantage because if we see here in the background information, it did say last week you lost your luggage. So I've done that. I've also added the passive voice, like I talked about earlier, the luggage that was lost during my holiday. So I'm not putting the blame on anybody, I'm remaining professional, and I'm including the necessary details. Okay, so that is done. I can definitely eliminate this if I wanted to. We do not need to do this anymore. Now we are ready already for our paragraph 1. So I have to describe the luggage. I'm going to use my own creative input here. I'm going to say the luggage is a green, medium-sized Samsonite model. So again, this is a nice description. I have my adjectives, green, medium-sized. I even have a label. You could really use any label or any brand that you wanted. And I'm going to say, since this holiday was the first time it had been used, it should appear to be in good condition. Okay, and again, I've got a lot of passive. The first time it had been used, obviously by me, but I want to remain professional, so I'm using the passive, and it should appear to be in good condition. Unfortunately, it does not have a luggage tag with my contact information. Again, I'm just adding information in. You do not have to use this in your essay. I just know that luggage tag is a great piece of vocabulary that fits with travel and fits with luggage, so I want to add it in. If you do not have a lot of vocabulary about travel, let's say you have 5 good words that you know about, try your hardest to fit it in because that will really help you with your lexical resource. So really utilize the information you already have in your mind, in your knowledge base when it comes to the topic at hand. Now, this has fulfilled the description. I've talked about what it is, and that is what I lost. So perfect. Let's continue to our paragraph 2. Now I have to explain how I lost it. And I talked about how the airline must have lost the luggage, perhaps on a different flight. So I'm going to embellish on that now. And I'm going to say, while I am not completely sure how the luggage was lost, I imagine that the airline might have placed it on a different flight. And this is also great. I'm telling them I'm not completely sure. I imagine that perhaps it might have been placed. So I'm using modal perfect. This is an advanced grammatical form, which would get me points on the grammatical range and accuracy. I'm going to continue and say, in fact, I have been in contact with the airline, and they are almost certain that this is the most probable scenario, okay? Now, this was not included in the information. This is my own explanation of how it might have been lost. I'm doing this because I'm aware of the vocabulary I want to use. I'm also aware of the grammatical forms. So using a modal perfect and present perfect in this case, I have been in contact. These are great ways to increase your grammatical range. So even if you don't have a great vocabulary base and you're more of a grammar person, use that to your advantage and add correct advanced forms into your letter. All right, so again, we have fulfilled that requirement about the explanation. Now we're going to tell the insurance company what we need from them, of course, doing so in a polite and professional way. I'm going to say, before I left, I had taken out travel insurance with your company, okay? And I'm going to say, based on the information in the contract, lost luggage is covered. Therefore, and I'm going to make sure I'm using correct capitalization, therefore, I have attached the insurance claim And I would appreciate, again, how I wrote in our outline, I would appreciate it if your company could review the approximated value of the luggage and process the attached claim as soon as possible. All right, so let's look at this paragraph. I am using the past perfect. Again, I want to get all of my advanced grammatical forms in there. I have taken out travel insurance. Based on the information in the contract, I know that lost luggage is covered. So I'm imagining that I have attached the insurance claim. And again, I'm using the conditional, very polite. I would appreciate it if your company could review. I'm not saying I need your company to review the value. No, because that would lose points with the tone and the lexical resource and even the task achievement. I want to be correct, formal, professional, and I've used the conditional here. So that is really the main content of the paragraphs. Now I'm just going to use a closing sentence because that is what you do in a letter. Note that the closing sentence is not included in your prompt, but you know just from writing and practicing, closing letters are important. So I'm going to say, please let me know if you require any other information. This is probably what you would write in your daily life as well. And then I'm going to do my farewell. I said I was going to say yours faithfully. So I'm going to say yours faithfully. And I'm going to use any name. It doesn't really matter what name you use. I'll say something like Sarah Hutchinson. There we go. So I have fulfilled everything from the greeting to the farewell and the name. Let's take a look at the word count for this specific letter. And it is 177 words. So perfect. I have met my minimum. I haven't gone too far over the minimum. So this is absolutely what you would strive to do. It's very organized. You've got your greeting. Everything is very clear. The examiner would see this and understand exactly what you were saying. Now what I'm going to do is show you just how many grammatical forms I used. We're going to look at vocabulary related to travel, advanced grammar instructions, and transition words. Okay, now just to give you an idea of the vocabulary, grammar, and transitions, I have highlighted these different words in different colors. First, let's look at the red. These are my transition words. This will make a difference in the cohesion and coherence. So for example, I have since the holiday was the first time, and then I explain. I use unfortunately, while I am not sure with a comma, and then I offer an explanation. In fact is a great way to give an example. Based on is offering evidence, and therefore is a great way to segue into what I'm saying as to what I need. Now, if I did not include these transition words, it would still make sense. I would have to change a couple of sentences, but I would probably have lost points for my coherence and cohesion because transition words really just make things flow a lot better. Now for my words in blue, these are words that have to do with travel, luggage. So I see things like insurance claim, luggage, luggage tag, airline, different flight, most probable, taking out insurance, approximated, claim, a value. These are all words that pertain to travel. And I didn't really just think of these words. This will come to you if you are practicing the topics that are most likely to be on the exam. And travel is definitely one of them. So understanding your vocabulary and all of your preparation work is so important for this task. And lastly, as I talked about as I was writing them, a lot of your grammar forms should be as advanced as possible, as much as you can do, because you want to show your range. So obviously I had things like present tense, past simple, very basic things. I also have the passive, I have past perfect, present perfect, conditional. These make all the difference when it comes to your writing score. Okay, so this would be an example of a Band 9 essay. In terms of task achievement, the essay covers the three main points very clearly. In terms of coherence and cohesion, it's all clearly organized in separate paragraphs. Again, the lexical resource we discussed of the words in blue, this is very important. And grammatical range and accuracy is also Excellent, because I've used different tenses and I've mixed it up when appropriate. So keep this all in mind. Remember your outline. This really helped me just formulate everything in a clear way, and I didn't waste time second guessing myself or putting new things in at the last minute. All right, great job today. Let's finish off this lesson. Okay, time to wrap up. I'm going to leave you with some do's and don'ts. First off, we have some do's. Obviously, you want to read and understand the question. This comes in 3 parts, like we looked at today. These are very important. Obviously, I took my time today to make sure you understood everything, but with more practice and on test day, you should be doing this rather quickly. So make sure you separate your question into 3 main areas. Then take the time to plan out your outline. It's really just going to be a minute of your time, and it's a minute that will not be wasted because it will ensure that you're confident and that you have a clear purpose when you are writing your letter. Make sure that for the formal letter, you're using proper and formal language. Keep that tone in check and make sure that you reference that slide we had earlier, and also just review all of your knowledge about English. If you have any extra time, make sure to check your accuracy and your grammar, any careless errors, and make one single line just like this for a mistake. Let's say you finish this writing task 1 with 10 minutes. That's great. Maybe you've practiced a lot. Maybe you are very confident, but don't just waste away that time twiddling your thumbs. Make sure you're using it efficiently and effectively. And so just make sure you're reading over things and catching for any useless errors, because that will cost you points. Now for things that you shouldn't do, don't start writing immediately. Even if you see other people writing immediately, you have your own strategy, you have prepared, so rest assured in that. Just start writing your outline, think about your 3 main areas, but do not start writing immediately. Also, do not write the wrong amount, so you want to have a minimum of 150 words, but you don't want to stray too far from that. You don't want to go into 220, 250. That is just taking too much time away from the other things you need to get done. Of course, for the formal letter, you don't want to use informal language. Keep your tone in your mind, and don't make any careless errors. This will cost you points. And of course, don't use contractions. All right, we did a lot today. Thank you for sticking